You know that drawer everybody has? The adapter drawer. Not the junk drawer, the other one. The drawer with one USB-C cable, two mystery dongles, an HDMI adapter from a job you had 3 laptops ago, and one tiny plastic thing that feels important, but nobody knows what it connects to anymore. That drawer is now Enterprise AI Strategy. A little harsh? Maybe, but stay with me. Because this week was not just another round of model announcements. It was a week about connectors, tool calls, managed agents, SDKs, MCP servers, mobile approvals, workspace integrations, enterprise platforms, and all the quiet plumbing that decides whether an agent can actually do work. The headline says, new model, new assistant, new agent, new platform. Very shiny, very conference stage friendly. The operator question is less shiny. Who owns the adapter drawer? Because if an agent can reach your calendar, your code base, your financial context, your search workflow, your shopping flow, your client platform, or your internal tools, then the real control surface is not just the model. It is the toolchain. The agent is only as governed as what it can reach. And right now, a lot of organizations are approving the agent, but not mapping the reach. That is how you get a beautifully funded raccoon with a badge reader. I know, I said I was parking the raccoon. It found a connector. Welcome back to AI Change Desk. I am Michael. Today is Wednesday, May 20th, 2026. This is episode 26, Agent Toolchain Ownership Check. This is AI Change Desk. Thank you for choosing to tune in. Quick disclosure before we start. AI-assisted tools were used in parts of the research and production workflow. Final editorial judgment, risk posture, and release approval stayed human-led. This is operational guidance, not legal advice. These are my opinions, and they are not representative of any organization. As I am source checking this on May 20th, the timing matters. Yesterday, Google I/O landed a large set of Agentic Gemini announcements. The day before that, Anthropic announced it is acquiring Stainless. And then Anthropic added a KPMG alliance announcement on top of it. OpenAI's May 14th and May 15th updates are still active continuity signals, especially around Codex mobile access and personal finance context. So the story changed a little overnight. Good. That is why we do the currentness check. Otherwise, this show becomes a museum tour with fresher fonts. And I refuse to become a museum tour with fresher fonts. Here is the frame. In episode 18, we talked about governance needing to become weekly behavior. In episode 22, we talked about access having a lifecycle. In episode 24, we talked about delegation quality. In episode 25, we talked about away mode controls, because the work now follows you when you leave the desk. Today is the next turn. If agents are going to act across tools, then someone has to own the toolchain. Not spiritually, not in a vibes-based RACI chart. Actually own it. Name on the control, name on the evidence, name on the off switch. Start with Google. At I/O on May 19th, Google framed the moment as an agentic Gemini era. That is the marketing language. The operator signal underneath is more specific. Google described Gemini 3.5 Flash, Gemini Omni, advances to anti-gravity, managed agents in the Gemini API, AI Studio Mobile, Gemini Spark, search agents, workspace updates, and agentic commerce patterns like Universal Cart. That is not one product. That is a surface area expansion. Developer tools, search, workspace, mobile, shopping, personal agents, background tasks, persistent environments. It is the agent moving from the chat window into the operating layer. And once that happens, you cannot govern it with a poster that says, "Please use AI responsibly." Lovely poster, probably has a tasteful gradient. Maybe a stock photo of a hand touching a glowing hexagon. But the agent does not care about your hexagon. The agent cares about permissions. Connectors, tools, files, execution environments, APIs, memory, state, approval paths. Governance has to move to the same layer where the work is happening. That is the Google lesson. When the product story is agents everywhere, the control story has to be ownership everywhere. Now, pair that with Anthropic acquiring Stainless. On May 18th, Anthropic announced it is acquiring Stainless, a company focused on SDKs, command line tools, and MCP server tooling. Anthropic says Stainless has generated every official Anthropic SDK since the early days of the API. That detail matters a lot. Because SDKs sound boring until something breaks. Then suddenly, the boring thing is the thing everyone is staring at. The SDK is how developers experience the API. The command line tool is how teams automate the work. The MCP server is how agents connect to systems. The connector is where policy becomes behavior, or policy becomes a decorative PDF with excellent margins. Anthropic's own framing is clear. Agents are only as useful as what they can connect to. That is, the sentence operators should underline. Not because it is a vendor slogan, but because it is an operating truth. If agents are only as useful as what they can connect to, then agents are also only as risky as what they can connect to, and only as auditable, and only as reversible, and only as stable. The connector is not a footnote. The connector is a control surface. This is where teams get sloppy. They approve the model. They approve the vendor. They approve the pilot. Then the actual work happens through a nest of SDKs, plugins, service accounts, API keys, shared folders, MCP servers, and one automation named final_really final, which is not a naming convention. It is a cry for help. If you do not know who owns that connective tissue, you do not know who owns the agent. You own a press release. The workflow owns you. Then, Anthropic and KPMG added the enterprise deployment version of the same story. On May 19th, they announced a global alliance. The announcement says KPMG is embedding Claude inside Digital Gateway, the platform KPMG people and clients use for actual work, starting with tools for tax and legal clients. It also says more than 276,000 KPMG employees globally will gain access to Claude. Again, do not hear that as a simple adoption headline. Hear it as an ownership problem arriving at scale. Tax work, legal work, client platforms, cybersecurity work, private equity portfolio work. Those are not toy surfaces. Those are consequential workflows. And the announcement explicitly leans into human judgment, workflow shaping, output evaluation, and decision-making with AI. That is the part operators should care about. Human in the loop is not a sentence. It is a job design. Who is the human? What are they checking? What evidence do they keep? When do they intervene? When do they refuse? And who backs them up when the workflow is moving faster than the org chart? This is where episode 24 comes back. Delegation quality is not about whether a person touched the process somewhere. That is box-checking theater. Delegation quality is about whether the right person had the right authority at the right moment with enough context to make the decision. Otherwise, you have a human in the loop the same way a houseplant is in the conference room. Present, technically alive, not reviewing the audit trail. Now, bring OpenAI back in as continuity, not the lead. The May 20th check shows the ChatGPT release notes still led by the May 15th personal finance entry, with the May 14th Codex mobile entry right behind it. Those are not new today, but they are still important. Codex in the mobile app means a person can review, steer, approve, or redirect agent work away from the desk. That is powerful. It is also exactly why episode 25 mattered. Away mode controls are not anti-productivity. They are anti-half-awake approval. The personal finance update is the same pattern in a more sensitive context. Connected accounts, financial memories, a dashboard, questions grounded in personal financial context. OpenAI says ChatGPT cannot move money, pay bills, place trades, file taxes, or act as a financial, legal, tax, or investment advisor. Good, that boundary matters. But for operators, the deeper signal is this. More products are moving from generic answers to connected context. And connected context needs connected governance. If the model can see more, the control map has to say more. So what do we do with all of this? We do not chase every headline. We build the map. This week's action is deliberately small. By Wednesday, May 27th, 2026, complete one agent toolchain ownership review. One workflow, not the whole company. Not a 90-slide transformation deck. Not a majestic spreadsheet that immediately becomes nobody's job. One workflow. Pick the highest impact agent workflow you have, or the one people are most likely to adopt without asking. Then answer 10 questions. First, what is the workflow? Be specific. Not AI for productivity. Name the actual job. Drafting client research. Reviewing pull requests. Summarizing support tickets. Creating campaign assets. Reconciling invoices. Second, what is the agent surface? Chat app? Desktop app? Mobile app? Browser? API? Managed agent? Internal automation? Third, what does it connect to? List the SDKs, API keys, MCP servers, files, calendars, databases, repositories, customer systems, payment systems, and yes, that one shared drive folder named temp, especially that one. Fourth, who owns each connector? Not who likes it, not who set it up 6 months ago and has since left for a company with better snacks. Who owns it now? Fifth, what is the permission boundary? Read only? Draft only? Can suggest? Can execute? Can publish? Can spend money? Can touch customer data? Can create records? Sixth, where is the human approval point? Before tool use? Before external sharing? Before code merge? Before customer delivery? Before money moves? Seventh, what evidence is created? Logs, prompts, outputs, approvals, diffs, source links, export records, review notes. If the evidence is, ask Brian, then the evidence is not evidence. It is Brian. And Brian deserves better. Eighth, what is the fallback route? If the agent fails, if the provider changes terms, if the connector breaks, if the mobile approval is missed, or if the workflow is paused, what happens next? Ninth, who can shut it off? Not eventually, not after a committee. Who can stop the workflow when the risk is obvious? 10th, when is the next review? Because toolchains drift, models change, connectors change, pricing changes, permissions change. The adapter drawer grows teeth. That is the agent toolchain ownership check. One workflow, 10 answers. One owner for the map. The point is not to slow down agents. The point is to stop pretending agents are just chat windows with ambition. They are becoming toolchains, and toolchains need owners. So here is the closing line. If your organization can say, "We approved this tool," but cannot say, who owns what it connects to, what it can do, what evidence it leaves, and who can turn it off, then you do not have agent governance yet. You have a drawer full of adapters, and one of them is plugged into production. Fix the map, then let the agents work. That is AI Change Desk. I am Michael. I will see you in the next episode. This is AI Change Desk. See you next time.